Share screen. Okay, can you see my slides? Oops. Okay. Are the slides showing?
Yes.
Okay, great. I use a number of different screens, so it always gets a little funky. Sure, so I'll just dive right in. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Clair Keene. I work with NDSU Extension out at the Williston Research Extension Center, and I am one of the co-coordinators for North Dakota SARE. So I just wanted to start with a little background on applying to these grants and tips for success, and then a little look at the grants website where you'd actually be submitting the online application. So first of all, just very quickly, what is SARE? SARE is a federal program, and it's very unique that it's the only federal level program that's really invested in making investments in sustainable agriculture and research and education very explicitly. And a very unique thing about SARE too is it's the only federal grant program I'm aware of where funds are available to go directly to farmers and ranchers for innovative ideas. And SARE is administered at a regional level, so it's federal funding, but it's given to the North Central region where North Dakota is. There's also a Northeastern, a Southern, and then a West region. If you're in North Dakota, you'd be applying through the North Central region, Minnesota as well. If you're in Montana, that is Western SARE, so you'd apply through the Western SARE region. For just a little bit about the Farmer Rancher Grant Program. So as I mentioned, these are grants given directly to farmers and ranchers to explore new production practices or marketing approaches to enhance their farm. If you apply as an individual, you can apply for up to $9,000. If you're with a team of 2, up to $18,000, and for groups of 3 or more, up to $27,000. And do note, these do need to be independent, separate farming operations. So if, say, you and a family member who are both farmers want to apply for the grant, you do need to have separate farming operations to be eligible for the $18,000. So if you're to partner with, say, an unrelated neighbor who has a separate farming entity, that would qualify. We do encourage you to link with partners on the outreach portion of the grant. Stephanie will say more about that later. But we certainly feel like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you have a relationship with your county extension or soil conservation district or a group like FARRMS to help you do outreach, please reach out to us. And I think, you know, more often than not, we're probably happy to partner with you to meet some of the outreach requirements of SARE grants. About 50 projects per year are funded. So it is a fairly competitive program. I don't know off the top of my head total number, but I believe the North Central region does get somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 or 300 applications each year. So they don't all get funded, unfortunately. But I wanted to just note that because if you don't get funded, don't get discouraged. It certainly doesn't mean you didn't have a good idea or a good proposal. It might be that other folks who had applied last year and were reapplying had the opportunity to improve the proposal and we're now a little bit higher in the priority line. And also there is no limit to how often you can apply. So again, if you don't get it your first time, don't get discouraged. Take reviewer comments, improve it, submit it again next year, and you might be able to get it on the second go round. So it is a fairly competitive program, and if you are awarded one, you know, congratulations, pat yourself on the back. It's certainly a good thing and an acknowledgement of a good proposal. For a timeline, every year in about mid-August, the call for proposals is released. That's when the online system opens up and you can begin working on a proposal. Also, I would encourage you, you know, in August or as soon as it's available, reading that call for proposals and see if there are any priorities that you fit into, things like soil health, their grazing practices, and just start thinking about what kinds of projects SARE is looking to fund. Early December, the proposals are due. This year, that is December 3rd, which is only in 2 weeks. So not a lot of time left for this year, but certainly, you know, thinking ahead, being aware of it for next year. In February, the funding decisions are made, and then April to May-ish, funds are available to successful applicants depending on the start date that they indicate for their project. If you are funded, you don't receive the entire budget request at once. I just wanted to quick highlight this again because sometimes depending on what you want to do and how you anticipate spending the funds could influence, how you go about your project timeline. So your first payment after notification of award will be at your project start date, and it'll be 50% of the amount you requested. The second payment will come after you submit a progress report, which is typically January of the following year. And then the final payment will actually be a reimbursement, the final 15%, until you've submitted the final project report and spent the grant money. And I just wanted to highlight that because depending on what you wanted to use the money for, if it was purchasing equipment or paying wages, do keep in mind the disbursement timeline, because say if all your costs are up front for equipment, you would be making that outlay yourself and getting 50%, and then the subsequent payments as you complete those reports. And just very quickly, keys to a successful proposal. The farmers we have here will help you understand this even better. From my perspective, some things: clearly identifying and stating the problem. I think farmers know their own operations well. They're very in tune with what they want to do. But remember, you're writing for an audience that may not be involved in the kind of farming you are. It might be a vegetable farmer and you're a livestock farmer, or vice versa. And so you just need to make a clear statement of what the problem is, and then what you want to do to address that problem, so that someone who knows very little about your operation can see what it is and why it's a good idea. Plan ahead and think through the whole project. There's a timeline that's required, so think about what you need to do when is very helpful. Also, make sure you're going to measure things and measuring the right things. If you're interested in, say, soil quality, and you want to do soil testing, make sure that you have, 2 or 3, whatever it is, soil testing events built in, and know which measurements you'd like the lab to test for. Same thing if you're interested in a livestock project and you want to increase, say, rate of gain on your cattle grazing a new cover crop. Make sure you're weighing those cattle at some point so that you have data that'll support what it is you're wanting to learn. And then develop a clear outreach plan. Again, something that I think makes SARE really unique and to me, a very positive program to be a part of, is they really emphasize the outreach component. SARE doesn't exist like other federal research programs to just say advance the state of academic knowledge about something. The kind of outreach SARE cares about is farmers talking to their farmers, farmers talking to their neighbors, farmers making changes on their own operation, and also reaching that out to others in their community. So make sure you have some ideas for how you'd go about doing that. Another big thing, give yourself some time with the website. We'll do that in a few minutes here. It's not the easiest website to use, unfortunately. They have improved it over the years and they're still working on it. But I just wanted to throw this out there because if you sit down, say on December 2nd, thinking, okay, I've got a day to submit it, that might not be enough time. It's a little bit cumbersome in that, you need to go through, it's lots of filling in boxes, checking boxes, and then they're very strict on the word limits. So the abstract, 200 words, your objective statement, only 100 words, outreach description, 300 words. An average paragraph is probably somewhere in the 200-word neighborhood, and then a long paragraph can easily be 300 words. So you have to be very clear and very succinct. And if you have too many words in those boxes, it won't let you upload it or submit it. So you do have to work within those word limits. You do need one letter of support that cannot be from a family member, so that's another component to keep in mind. And then I have heard that you can sometimes encounter difficulties if you want to enter, say, a video or a Facebook post or something you had done about, something innovative as evidence of your work and your farm. That's great. Those are encouraged. Those are allowed. However, again, sometimes that system can just struggle with larger files. So give yourself time. I would say, even today, if you're thinking about applying this year, go ahead, create an account, fill in that basic name and address and email information, stuff like that, and then just kind of spend some time looking through how that website's set up, and then give yourself a few days at least, I'd say, to get stuff entered in. It doesn't mean, fortunately, I really don't think it won't take 3 8-hour days to do it, But the point is, you can really run into a crunch at the end, you know, if you only have a day to get it done and then you're at the computer all day fighting with the system. So try to avoid that. Give yourself some time with that website. And so with that, I will attempt to put the website on my screen. Hopefully I can do that. Let's see here. Okay, there's that. Let's see. Are folks now seeing the SARE Farmer Rancher website?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you Google SARE or North Central SARE, if you go to the SARE website, you'll click on the North Central region. If you made it to the North Central website, you want to go to, so it's North Central region SARE. We have our grants page. We'll click on the Farmer Rancher grant, learn more. Good information about just what is the program. There's frequently asked questions. And then what we want to do right now is start your grant proposal. And this will take you to the website where you create an account if you don't have an account. So you'll need to create an account, you know, put in your information and then set up a username and a password. Once you have that, you'll be able to log in. So we'll log in. I have an account. So we'll log in here and you'll have an option to start a new grant proposal. So you could click start a new grant proposal. And I'm in North Dakota, so my North Central region. And the only one open right now is that Farmer Rancher grant. So I'd click this to begin a new proposal. And so then the way it works, so let's say my titles, this is an example I'd used. So if I want intercropping peas and canola in Western North Dakota to increase profitability and reduce fertilizer use, I put that in that box and I save it. And so now I have a title to my grant. I am listed as the principal investigator or the person who'll be applying for the grant. And then the way the website's set up is that each section has instructions with it. So under general information, more information about what is the grant, the different categories that SARE is looking to support. And then down at the bottom here, sorry for scrolling, you know, this is where that basic information is. So your state, so we're in North Dakota. You'd type in your county, questions about Farmer Rancher, how many people are involved, etc., etc. So lots of filling in boxes here. And then I want to go back up, or sorry, you can also navigate next section. So on the actual grant proposal section, again, there's instructions for each part. And then this is where you have your boxes to add in your abstract, your objectives, etc. And so, you know, most folks would be working in, say, a Word document. You can just copy and paste into this, but again, be aware of that word count. That's very important. If you know, say have a 400-word abstract and you copy and paste it in here, then when you go to click save, it's going to just drop those last 200 words. So paying attention to the word limit's very important. And same thing, you have to go through and fill out each section is its own box, and answering questions about, you know, what areas are relevant to your project. The other thing I wanted to just quick hit was the budget. There's a whole section if you do have livestock, you have to answer questions about caring for the livestock, things like that. Yeah, budget. The budget is a little clunky. Unfortunately, it's not just a copy and paste of a table where you have your expenses. You do have to go in and enter item by item what you want to do. And so again, just that it can take time thing. Unfortunately, the budget's kind of a pain in the neck, and you just have to do it. So say add a budget item. I'm gonna say equipment, and you know, I need canola seed. I say I need canola seed. I'm going to say a 50-pound bag of canola, and it's enough for 2 years. And that bag of canola might cost whatever it costs, $400. And then I'd have to say, okay, $400, add, I'm also going to pay, say, John Doe, wages for John to collect data, and he's going to get, let's see, $20 an hour times 10 hours, $200, 200, and then we'll save. And then it'll auto-generate the budget out of the things you enter. So again, just something that takes time and is a little clunky. You have to work through that. And then anyways, once you're all done filling in all the boxes, you have an opportunity to view a draft. And you know, obviously I didn't fill in most of it, so I have lots of missing things that I will need to go back and do. But then once everything is done, you'll be able to submit it. And so to not take up more time, I will leave it there.
Thank you, Claire. That was a great overview of the grant application process. I wanted to also touch on partnerships. You know, you said it's important to find partners can really help your proposal. So FARRMS is here. We can be a partner in your application. We can provide letters of support. Support if you need one. You just need the one letter of support, but it can't be from a family member. You know, we have grant writing experience at FARRMS, so we would be happy to have a conversation with you if you need somebody to bounce ideas off, to talk through your proposal, if you need somebody to read through what you've written so far, do some minor editing. And a big thing that we can do is help with outreach. FARRMS and many other organizations in the state, such as Extension, have their own goals about reaching farmers with education. And if you're doing a project, you would actually be helping us achieve our goals. So we are here to help you reach other farmers with what you learn in your proposal. So I want to turn the conversation over to our farmers who have successfully written this proposal. We have 3 farmers here, Derek Lowstuter, Megan Mahoney, and Amber Lockhart. And I would like each of you to introduce yourself briefly, introduce yourself, your farm, and tell us about what your grant project was about. And I'm going to start with Derek.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Derek Lowstuter. My wife and I own Folly Hill Farm just outside of Bismarck, North Dakota. We also own and operate an organic fertilizer business called Black Bison Organics. And the farm currently, my wife and I both work full-time off the property, so we don't spend as much time on it as we'd like. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to pursue this grant, just so that we'd be able to fill in some of the gaps for our outreach, and then also budgeting for the project that we applied for. So the project that we applied for under SARE was a deep winter greenhouse. So we had the greenhouse itself financed. So none of the grant funds would be used for construction, but they would be used for additional materials to improve the operation of the greenhouse, and then monitoring equipment to kind of keep track of the greenhouse performance, to see how we could actually increase the efficiency of the greenhouse and improve its use for us. So that was the project that we applied for.
Sorry. Thank you, Derek. Megan, would you share next?
Hello.
Your audio is a little fuzzy. Maybe I will skip over to Amber and let you take a minute to sort out the audio.
Hi, my name is Amber Lockhart, and I run Heart and Soil Farm with my husband Ross. It's a small vegetable farm just outside of Fargo, and I'm currently a peer reviewer for the Farmer Rancher grants in our region. And then we also received a grant a few years ago, a SARE grant, for a project to help mitigate cabbage looper damage in our brassicas. And we were looking for an organic way to deal with those pests using floating row cover and some companion planting. And we were looking for a system that allowed us to have more usable product at the end to sell that didn't require a lot of cost input and extra time. And we did close that out in 2018.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Okay, Megan.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Megan Mahoney, and I'm a full-time beekeeper. And I run a small satellite population of a special kind of honeybee from North Dakota in the summer and fall, and down to Southeast Texas in the winter and spring. And I applied for this grant to help me develop a viable breeding population to produce sustainable stock for other beekeepers. And in particular, it uses a specialized equipment using artificial insemination devices for honeybees. So I needed extra income and money to get this breeding population up to a market viable population and offset some of the costs of specialized equipment and personnel.
I keep muting myself to make sure I don't have any background noise and then forget. Thank you, Megan, for that. And thank you all for your introductions. So I've prepared some questions for each of you. You all had slightly different experiences in writing the grant and can speak to different aspects. Megan, you said this is the first grant you've written. Can you talk a bit about the process you went through to write the grant? What was it like for you?
Yeah, actually, it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I started thinking about it before the request for proposals was even open. And it was an idea that I had, before I really knew that I would be eligible for applying for this grant. So it was a real mental exercise, actually, for me to fit it into the format that SARE asks for, and to kind of come up with a solution, a problem and a solution to the problem. So for me, it actually really helped wrap my mind around my business plan, the timeline and the budget. It really helped me format my own business. But yeah, it took a lot of time. I probably rewrote it about 5-6 times. I'd write it and then look back at it and rewrite it and add different things. So I'm very happy that I was able to submit a successful proposal.
Definitely, and kudos to you for winning the proposal, the grant on your first try. Derek, you had a slightly different experience. This wasn't your first try at writing the grant. But what did you learn from the first try that helped you succeed the second time around?
Sure, yeah. So we had applied in the past and were unsuccessful, but what was good about that is that the reviewers provided comments on what they liked, what they didn't like, gaps in the information that we provided. And through those comments, we were able to improve the application for this project. So the previous application was for a completely different project, but not being awarded that. And then those comments from the reviewers, we were able to really identify what would make a successful project. And a lot of that is what, what Claire spoke to, and, making sure that you have a problem that you're looking to solve. Really, the process is about identifying, what you're interested in, and narrowing the scope of the project to something that's feasible. Because a lot of people have these ideas for projects that might seem feasible in their head, and then once they actually start laying it out, it becomes more difficult. So going through the grant writing process is helpful, kind of like what Megan mentioned, kind of helping identify the parts of the business plan and flesh out those details.
Okay. Amber, I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer the same question too. And you come with maybe some more grant writing experience, or at least having reviewed it. But tell us about your process for writing this grant.
Sure. Yes, I do have some grant writing experience. I used to work with grants at a past job, but I think you learn something with every grant that you approach, and each organization has their own unique way of wanting to have the submissions done, and so it's a new experience every time, I think. For me, I took a lot of time getting familiar with the SARE grant system. Like Claire was saying, it is a little bit clunky to insert your information at the end, and so I wanted to make sure that we had lots of time to do that, especially since I like to write everything out and review it on paper, and so I did a lot of cutting and pasting and wanted to give myself a lot of time to work with reformatting and whatnot. But I like to start with an outline of what I want to do in the project and then flesh it out from there in each individual section. And they provide really good feedback on what they're looking for with those sections. I also spent a lot of time looking at past grants that were awarded and looking at the language and how they went about setting up those projects and seeing what would work for us. And then if I had questions, asking. SARE's been really great about feedback. So we had questions on putting together the budget, and they have a lot of materials online, and then people that you can connect with if you have questions. You don't feel like you have to do this alone. And then, at the end, I tried to make it as least stressful as possible and try to have a little fun with the writing. This is something that you're passionate about, this project. And so I think it's important to let that enthusiasm shine through in your writing. And as a reviewer too, you can definitely see the people that are really excited about the projects that they have. And that's always a positive thing.
Definitely. And I don't know if we've mentioned yet, Amber said it's a good idea to review past projects. If you go to SARE's website, NC-SARE.org, you can find past grant projects. All the grants that have been awarded are listed there. It's a searchable database, and you can read the project abstracts, and if the project has been completed, you can read the final report. So that's a great resource if you're thinking about writing this grant. So Claire emphasized that outreach is important. You know, this isn't just for your purposes. SARE wants, and FARRMS and all of us want this to benefit all the farmers in the community. What can they learn from the work that you've done? So Amber, can you talk about the partnerships you built and the outreach you did?
Sure. Partnerships were a really important piece of our project. We were working with trying to mitigate the damage of pests that we weren't terribly familiar with. And so we wanted to look for people that had expertise in that area that we didn't have. And we reached out to a contact at NDSU. We're very lucky to be just 25 miles from NDSU. And so we actually wrote in a grad student at NDSU into the grant to help us with some of the data collection and identification, and also they got really excited about the project, and they had students come out and help us set it up, which was really great. It was a good experience, and through them we had a field day as part of our outreach, and that's a strong partnership that we still have today, and we still work with them on different projects, and it allowed us to get this information out to a wider community than we could have done on our own.
Definitely. Megan, you also did some outreach and have plans to do more. Can you tell us about the outreach that you've done already?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't been able to do as much outreach as I'd like to this year because I've had quite a few conferences that didn't happen in person or got rescheduled. So I hope that next year, my project is a 2-year project. So I do think that's one advantage of having a 2-year project, that you have more time to meet your objectives and the outreach component. But I did make a special PowerPoint, just regarding this project and the objectives of this project to share with members of my beekeeping community. And I have 4-H. I did a 4-H virtually. I did a video interview. I had to do a couple conferences over Zoom, and I hope to be able to go in person to some of these beekeeping conferences through North Dakota and nationally.
Excellent. So I'm going to move on to the reporting aspect. So Amber, of the 3, you're the only one who has gone through the full cycle. Your project was a few years ago, so it's been completed already.
Stephanie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it does say recording paused.
Mine doesn't.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe, interesting.
Well, we are also broadcasting on Facebook Live, and that leaves a recording on Facebook. So,
okay, sorry to interrupt.
But thank you, because I do want people to benefit from this webinar. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So Amber, you talked about in your final report, you didn't have the outcomes that you were hoping for from your project, but was it really a failure? Tell us about the final reporting process and how you handled the fact that you didn't have the outcomes that you'd hoped for.
Sure. The final report is a really important part of the grant process, and it's important to put as much time and effort into that report as you do into the original proposal that you're submitting, and making sure you're keeping really detailed notes throughout the project. It's really hard to sit down after 2 years and try to remember details from the year or 2 prior. We also took a lot of pictures throughout, so we had a lot of documentation to put together at the end, and give ourselves a lot of time to submit it. I will admit, yes, our project was did not go the way we had intended. We had a lot of circumstances beyond our control that really put a damper on things. And so the final report process was a little painful for us because it was mostly what were our lessons learned and what could we do in the future to mitigate these things that occurred. Although talking with people at SARE, I was amazed at how they didn't look at it as the way that we did, as sort of things failed for us. It was more, you know, you learn something from every project. And so I really utilized that to think through that final report and what lessons did we learn from this. And it is searchable, so, you know, making sure that we wrote a thorough, well-written report, because that is, you're making recommendations to folks who may want to try this project. And so we wanted to make sure that if somebody did want to give it a go and under different circumstances, we had valuable information for them to do that and what we learned.
Claire, do you have anything to add from SARE's perspective about that?
Yeah, a few folks mentioned, you know, about support from SARE. I forgot to mention, there is actually a NCR North Central Region SARE support person who's full-time dedicated to the Farmer Rancher grant. Her name is Joan Benjamin. You can find her contact information on the Farmer Rancher grant webpage. And so Joan is available by phone or email to answer questions about putting together a budget, or talking about, you know, even if you're not quite sure how to word something, if you're trying to make that clear problem statement, Joan's available to give feedback to folks for that. Also myself, and then Carl Hoppy, he's a livestock extension specialist over in Carrington. We are also available to look over a grant proposal before you submit it, if that's something you're interested in. But then getting back to what Amber was saying with lessons learned, yeah, I think that's also something that SARE really tries to look at things holistically, that even if, you know, something doesn't go the way you thought, finding, you know, what lessons did learn in whatever it is that you set out to do is viewed as valuable. I do think, as Amber said, you know, it would probably take a little bit more time maybe to kind of work through something. You know, you didn't get to X, right? You thought you were going to get to X, and maybe now you're at Y, but you still got somewhere. Something happened, you know, talking about why things failed. Actually, as a researcher, that happens all the time. You know, why didn't I see an effect of that? Or, you know, whatever, we got a torrential downpour, or the jackrabbits ate the chickpeas, or whatever, like stuff happens. And I think SARE knows that. And so what they're interested in is, you know, your perspective, your experience. If it didn't work, why didn't it work? And did it give you new ideas to try things? Did you change directions and try something else? Providing that report to make it a shared experience, like Amber said, I think is very important and also valuable. I mean, again, just because you didn't get to X, it doesn't mean that it was a failure, but helping people understand, you know, where is Y, and are there, you know, useful things that you got out of it to go forward with.
Thank you. Yes, great advice. Let's talk about identifying this the specific problem that you're solving, or framing it as a problem. I was going to ask Derek, but you did talk about that already. So I'll switch back to Amber. How did you identify the problem that you wanted to solve with your grant?
Well, on our farm, we were seeing complete crop loss of certain brassicas due to the cabbage leaper pests. And we use organic practices. And even though some sprays are eligible to use under organic practice, we still were hoping to find ways that we didn't need to do that. And so we were thinking through what is a way we can stop this damage so we can have more product to sell, because it was, we were having an economic impact from this. But we needed to make sure that it didn't cost more than we were getting back from it, and that it could be replicated on other farms, and that it wasn't incredibly time consuming. Because we know a lot of small scale growers don't have a lot of extra time. And so when we put the project together and thought, how do we solve this problem? We were trying to move all of those pieces together to see what could be something that was inexpensive, easy to replicate, and relatively time efficient for us. And so that's how we came up with the original idea to hopefully help solve the problem that we were having, and that we knew a lot of people around us were having.
Great. Megan, I'm going to ask you the same question. How did you how did you come up with the problem you needed to solve? How did you frame it as a problem?
Well, in the beekeeping industry, we're very good at producing a number of queens, but specialized stock is much harder to maintain, and the demand for these specialized stocks is greater than the supply. And this particular stock that I'm working on it deals with recessive traits. So there's pest and disease resistance, winter hardiness, production, and gentleness, that it would benefit all beekeepers in the nation to have some of these traits. So the problem that I presented was just that the demand for these specialized sustainable stocks was greater than the supply, so that this grant could help me develop a viable breeding population to fill this need.
Great.
Yeah.
And Derek, how did you frame your question?
Well, really the problem that we were wanting to address is there's lots of systems in these deep winter greenhouses that can potentially work against themselves. Like different exhaust fans or intake fans, depending upon the settings, they can work against each other. And because this is the first deep winter greenhouse in the state, every greenhouse is different. Every location that the greenhouse is in is different. So we wanted to have the equipment to tweak different aspects of the greenhouse automation, and then having the monitoring equipment in place to determine what impact that had. So really the problem that we were going to solve was improving the efficiency by having things working synergistically instead of against itself.
Great. And again, these proposals are all on the SARE webpage. If you are interested in reading more in the author's own words. So the only question I have left is just to ask you all what advice you'd have for somebody writing this grant. So before we go there, I'm wondering, Claire, do you have any other things that you'd like our farmers to address? Questions?
Actually, something, I can't remember who mentioned it. It might have been Amber. But something I forgot to point out on the website, it is required in the application to look at previously funded SARE projects. They do have a link right there in the application to click on, and it takes you to a database where you can search You can search by state, you can search by year, you can put in terms like cover crop or greenhouse or chickens or eggs or whatever. But that is a required part. And I guess I'd be interested in hearing the farmers' comments, because I know I always get a little overwhelmed myself sometimes with grant applications. You're like, oh no, I need to know the whole body of literature that's out there to just talk about this one thing I want to do. And no, you don't have to. So, first of all, know that. There's no expectation that you read every project in SARE that says cover crops. But they do want to see that you've taken the time to look at, maybe 2 or 3 and say, okay, I saw someone did this and someone did this, and that, makes me think maybe I should do this. And so I'd just like to hear the farmers speak to, how was that process, looking at other work to then, meet that requirement for the proposal, to say that you did that, and did it help you refine your own writing?
Megan, I'll let you go. You go first. You unmuted yourself.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I found that the research and review section, I think it was called, was the hardest part of the grant. And I found it incredibly helpful to look through the SARE website and see what was previously funded. And in my proposal, I referenced some of those grants that had been awarded, not just for North Central SARE, but for nationwide grants. So I just, for my case, I just looked up something similar to what I wanted to do, like, for example, honeybee breeding. And I found all of these different grant proposals that had been funded, and it was actually really interesting to read through them and reference the fact that there had been previous and ongoing work that could kind of buttress my argument for developing a sustainable population or diversity, or so I thought that was really, really helpful and important.
Definitely. What about you, Derek?
Yeah, there certainly had been some deep winter greenhouse related SARE projects before, but they were from a while ago. So it was interesting to kind of see the development of the questions that people were asking regarding this type of greenhouse and how to grow in them. But I think the most beneficial thing in reading the past projects is how the project is framed, how they went about it, and the lessons they learned from it. So kind of going back to Amber's comment about the final report being as important, if not more important, really than the application, is that's where these projects, fill in, what they learned and what they might do differently. And that can really help you frame not only the problem that you're wanting to solve, but how you approach it.
And Amber, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, just briefly, like Claire said, it can be a little overwhelming to see the large number of projects, and what we really took from it, like Derek was saying, was how to frame those things, and then seeing that something similar might have been done somewhere else, but you are dealing with very different conditions in your area, and how you can adapt some of the pieces that someone else had worked on for your region. And so we try to utilize that information and say, okay, well, we can use that piece here, or that wouldn't work here. And then when we wrote that in our section explaining those pieces.
Great. Well, with our remaining time, I would just love to hear what advice, I'll start with Amber. What advice do you have for somebody writing this grant?
Sure. As a reviewer, we are asked to continually think of the question, does this help sustainable farming ranchers? And so keeping that in mind as you're writing it, looking beyond just your farm and how this might work in a greater whole, and making sure that you're using clear, detailed language. They're not expecting professional grant writers, but you do need to convey what your project is in clear language, and taking time for each section. They're all weighed differently, but they're all important, and some of them demonstrate what you understand about your project, and some of them demonstrate how successful you think you'll be at finishing this project and getting those outreach pieces out. And then just looking at the scope of it, you have 1 to 2 years to do the project. And although some projects that might be of value take 10 to 15 years, you can't do all that in one piece. So pull out one part of that larger project if you're looking at it as a longer term thing, and really focus on that one piece and what can you get done, what's manageable in that time frame given. And I guess that would be what I would say would be successful, and you know, just make sure that that you're really excited about your project and that you're putting that enthusiasm in there.
Definitely. Megan, what advice do you have?
Yeah, definitely, like Amber and Derek both said, I think having a achievable number of objectives is key, because I've seen, I mean, I wanted to put in like 1 million objectives and achieve all these things and change the whole industry, and really getting it down to a few, 2 or 3, for me anyway, made it a lot more, I think it made it a much more streamlined proposal once I kind of was able to hone in on what my actual most important objectives were and if they were or were not achievable. So that's a big one. I also think if you can get anybody to edit it and just read it and get some advice on that, that was really helpful for me. And one thing that I found helpful is just reading it aloud to myself, because as I read it aloud, it kind of forced me to go through it more slowly instead of just scanning what I'd already written. And reading it aloud gave me the chance to correct grammatical errors and just the general flow of the proposal. So I had fun with it.
Definitely. And these are all, this is great advice for writing any grant, not just this one. Derek, what advice do you have?
Yeah, I would say take time with it. So, you know, write kind of a first draft of the application, let it sit for a little while, and then come back to it. And there's probably things that you would change with it with fresh eyes, or maybe even more experience in that topic. And then especially want to reiterate what Megan said in having someone edit it, not just for, you know, the technical aspects of it, but also how it flows, whether the application makes sense itself for addressing this problem that you are trying to address through this project. So yeah, give yourself plenty of time, come back to the application multiple times, and then yeah, get some fresh eyes on it. So not just your own, but other people's as well.
Definitely. I just want to let you all know that one of our viewers on Facebook, Mary Podol from NRCS, said, great information. Thank you to FARRMS for hosting, and thank you to all the speakers. So kudos to all of you from Mary. So before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts that any of you want to share? Starting with Claire.
Sure. I agree with, you know, what all the farmers said. Very good advice. I think I'll just reemphasize achievable. I think as Megan said, I know, especially folks, you're passionate about what you do. You probably have a lot of great ideas and things you want to try. And I'm not saying, don't try all of them, but, for a 1 year, a 2 year project and, $9,000, there is only so much you can do. And I would say SARE knows that. And I think, a grant agency, typically you'd rather fund, there's a problem, you have a clear objective, and you're likely to achieve it or learn something. That tends to be a lot more fundable than someone who has, say a really great concept, but, that might take 10 years to achieve. It has to fit within the scope of the grant. So don't be worried if you think, oh, I just have this little problem and I just need $5,000 for this piece of equipment to see if it'll work. I mean, actually that's kind of what we're looking for. If it sounds, achievable within the time frame given, that's a good thing. Yeah, don't feel like you have to try to promise the moon when, $9,000, may not be able to get you there. So don't be worried if it seems like a small thing. If it's clear, if it's relevant, if it's achievable, that's actually, the hallmarks of a good proposal. So you have a problem, think about how to approach it, and just go with it. Yeah, don't get worried about, is this good enough? Is it big enough? Because it is, in the grand scheme of things, a fairly smaller grant. So don't feel burdened that you have to go big. Something achievable, something that'll help advance your business, your farming, is a good place to start.
Definitely. That is a great summary for this webinar. I will just give a minute if any of the other three of you have any final words. I'd welcome those.
Yeah, I would just add that if you do end up applying and you don't receive funding, don't give up. There's plenty of good projects that don't get funded. So, read the comments of the reviewers. Don't take it personally. You can, if you want, take the time to incorporate those comments into a new proposal, and then you can come back and resubmit it. So yeah, don't feel bad if you do a great job applying. You might not get funded. There's not an unlimited funding source, and the SARE reviewers have to make difficult decisions.
Great advice.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too that just to encourage people to try it, because I think it's a good practice for not only growing your grant writing skills, but also developing your ideas. And you might have a proposal that sounds really great in your head, and when you start putting it down on paper, you come up with a lot of things that would be a challenge to that proposal, or a different way to frame it. So I think I'm very glad that I gave it a shot, and it was a really good experience for me overall, just in writing it. And it was bonus that it got funded, but also helpful just to write it down.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and expertise. This webinar has been recorded and will be shared on FARRMS webpage later this week. Please go to farrms.org, that's FARRMS with 2 R's, for more information about our programs and our projects. We have Farm Dreams coming up, which is for anybody who's dreamed of starting a farm, who wants to do some of the things that that Amber, Derek, and Megan are doing, but is just getting started out. We'll help you get started. We have Farm Dreams coming up, and Farm Beginnings is our entrepreneurship course, which is later this winter. So again, thank you all, and have a great afternoon.